Somewhere on every trip, there's a moment where I'm sitting in my camp chair with a hot cocoa, watching the sun go down, and I know somebody out there thinks that makes me soft. 20 some years out there, a few hundred nights in the backcountry, and there's still this unspoken rule that if you're comfortable out there, you're doing it wrong. The chair, the pillow, the real dinner, those are supposedly for people who aren't serious. That rule is nonsense, and I'll tell you exactly why. So what am I actually talking about when I say comfort? It isn't survival gear. It's not your rain shell, your water filter, or a warm sleeping bag. Those are baseline necessities, the stuff that keeps a trip safe and functional. Comfort is everything above that line, the stuff you don't strictly need, but choose to carry anyway. A sit pad, a real pillow instead of a stuffed sack full of clothes, a hot meal instead of cold soaked noodles, maybe a book, a camp chair, an extra pound of coffee because for you, coffee makes a trip. None of that is required. You could run a trip without any of it and come home fine. That's the whole point. But somewhere along the way, people started treating optional like it meant unnecessary, and unnecessary like it meant wrong. But how much you carry is ultimately a choice about the trip you want and not a test that you pass or fail. Pack light, pack heavy, you're still a backpacker either way. A 3-day loop in the Sierra with a chair and real food is still backpacking. A fast, stripped down push through the Grand Canyon is still backpacking. Different tools for different goals, both legitimate. And if getting better at making that call is what you're after, subscribe because that's what this channel's for. So how did the notion that comfort makes you less of a backpacker even start? Honestly, it wasn't always a notion. For a long time, it was just reality. Go back a few decades and the gear was genuinely heavy, genuinely uncomfortable, and suffering a little was just part of the deal. You carried a beast of a pack and you toughed it out because there wasn't another option. Out of that era came a real badge of honor in enduring the trips, and that pride, that I can take it mentality, stuck around a long time after the gear got better. Then came ultralight. Ultralight backpackers built a real useful body of knowledge, smarter gear choices, better systems, fewer pounds for the same trip. A lot of that thinking is genuinely good, and if you're chasing big miles, technical terrain, or trips where every ounce changes what's possible, going light is the right call. Respect where it's earned. But at some point, people turned a useful philosophy into like a standard and turned that standard into a bit of a flex. Today, base weight numbers get posted like some kind of competition. People compare pack weights the way they used to compare how many peaks they bagged. And once a community starts ranking itself by a single number, anyone above that number can start to feel like they're doing something wrong, even when their trip went great. Even when they slept well and ate well and came home wanting to go back out. That's the actual issue. People took a genuinely useful set of ideas and turned it into an unspoken standard that doesn't fit everyone's goals. A fast and light setup makes sense for someone chasing distance. It doesn't make sense for someone who backpacks twice a year and wants those 2 trips to feel restorative and not like an endurance test. Neither approach is more legitimate. One just gets a little more hype online these days. Ultimately, you don't owe anyone a base weight number. You don't owe an explanation for the chair you strap to your pack. The people who judge you for those things usually aren't the people you're out there with anyways. Beyond how people may judge your loadout, there's a practical case for backpacking in a style that's comfortable too. Sleep is a big one. A real pillow, slightly thicker pad, earplugs, whatever gets you actual rest. That's not indulgence. That's just taking care of yourself. You think more clearly on day 3 when you actually slept on days 1 and 2. You make better calls about weather, routes, and pacing when you're not running on poor sleep and a rolled up jacket under your head. If I get bad sleep a few nights in a row, I feel it pretty fast. small mistakes can start creeping in exactly when you can least afford them. Food is the other half of it. Eat a real dinner instead of another bar, and the next morning you've got more patience for a stuck zipper, more patience for a partner when the weather turns, more energy for the next climb. Eating well on the trail isn't being soft. It's maintenance for the body that has to carry you another 10 miles tomorrow. There's a longer range effect too, and it matters more than any single trip. Comfortable trips are the ones you want to repeat. If every outing feels like something to just survive, you go out less. If your trips include real rest, real food, and a few small luxuries, you come home wanting the next one. The people I know who are still out there year after year, still excited to plan the next trip, are rarely the ones who ran the leanest kits. They're the ones who identified the types of trips they like to take and packed their gear accordingly. So what actually counts as worth carrying in addition to standard backpacking gear? Well, it's personal, but a few items show up again and again for people who've settled into their own version of comfortable. A real sleeping pad. Not the thinnest one you can find, but one that actually supports side sleeping and doesn't wake you up every time you shift at night. An inflatable pillow. Even a heavier pillow like a foam pillow can beat a stuffed sack of clothes that goes lumpy by 2 a.m. A camp chair, or at least a sit pad so you're not perched on a rock for 3 hours every evening. A cooking system that makes an actual meal instead of just rehydrated paste. Or a real coffee setup, something with texture and flavor after a long day. A book, a deck of cards, something that makes camp feel like a place you want to be, not just a place where one hike stops and the next one begins. None of this is about impressing anyone. A camp chair and a good cup of coffee aren't there to prove a point to anybody. They're small, personal choices made for one person, you. At the end of a long day, deciding what actually makes the evening better. The real test isn't an item's weight either. It's whether you'd carry it again. If a chair sat unused in your pack for 3 trips, well, that's not comfort. That's dead weight and you should cut it. But if you use something every single night and you'd feel its absence immediately, that's not excess. That's you knowing your own trip. None of this is a push towards carrying more just to carry more, okay? Some people are genuinely happier with less, and their version of happy is just as real as yours. The main shift here that's valuable is in how you decide. Instead of asking whether something is the lightest option, ask whether it makes the trip better for you. Those are different questions, and they can land on completely different answers depending on who's asking. There's an old line in the hiking world, hike your own hike. Usually said about pace on trail, about not matching someone else's speed just because they're ahead of you, but it applies just as well to what's in your pack. Your loadout doesn't need to match the YouTuber that you follow online, or the person you're hiking with, or some average base weight pulled from a forum. It needs to match the trip that you're actually trying to have. So figure out what you can't sleep well without, what you don't mind skipping, and build from there. That's the same shift I went through with the ultralight backpacking specifically, and I got into that whole story in this next video. If you've ever felt the pull between going lighter and being comfortable, watch that one next. So go pack for your next trip, spare yourself a few years of second guessing your chair, and I'll see you on the trail.